So welcome everybody, this is the SharePoint Patterns and Practices General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group. So bi-weekly meeting where we talk about all of the cool stuff around SharePoint development in the context of SharePoint development, well, in SharePoint Online or on-premises in general. Now in this call we talk about, I'm actually going to go one step back because we removed the intro slide. In this call we talk about everything else except the SharePoint framework development, but you can absolutely have a discussion in the IAM window related on SharePoint framework and JavaScript customization. I think there was somebody asking already questions related on using Microsoft Graph in the context of application customizer, and I think we have that one as a tutorial actually in the documentation, so it goes step by step explaining what you need to do. So it doesn't really matter if it's a application customizer or a web part, it is the same story. Now, anyway, in this call, we talk about the CSOM extensions, PnP PowerShell, the provisioning tooling. We talk about the PowerApps and Flow also in the context of SharePoint. So in the context of SharePoint always, because those are, even though they're not technically part of the SharePoint, they're interesting tools that people are using to design the end-to-end solutions for their customers in the SharePoint context. So I think more and more in the future, when we are thinking about or when you are designing a solution in SharePoint Online, you're actually using multiple different tools. So you design the end-user solution or the portal or the experience using Microsoft Teams and Flow and PowerApps and maybe some customizations here and there and SharePoint Framework, web parts and experiences and modern portals. So it's a combination of multiple things, and that's why we want to actually talk about quite broadly these things in the SharePoint community calls. Now, quick reminder, let me actually click that one so the clicker is working. Quick reminder for anybody in the community, if you're interested on doing a live demo by yourself, getting exposure and in these calls, that is more than welcome. Just being me, Patrick, Bert, or anybody from the team, or Chris, or anybody from the team, and we'll schedule a spot in the upcoming community calls. The whole purpose of this one is that if you have a cool sample or a cool story which you want to share related on SharePoint development, you are more than welcome to have the 10 to 15 minute spot in these calls. You can absolutely also contribute in GitHub. We have quite a big actually GitHub surface within the SharePoint developer context, since we've been having open source activities already for 5-6 years already in GitHub in the context of SharePoint. And the most important thing, if nothing else, please give us feedback. So if something isn't working, you're frustrated with Microsoft because Microsoft doesn't understand something, tell us what we don't understand and then we can help you. Don't be frustrated by yourself without telling us what is wrong, so we're able to help you. So that is super important thing as well. Not being frustrated, rather providing us the feedback. Just being clear on that, and that was a joke. Now, moving on things. So agenda of today, we're going to go one sliders per PnP CSOM Core. Probably Bert is going to talk about that one. We're going to go through PnP PowerShell, and Erwin's going to update us on that one. And modernization tooling, Bert is going to talk about that one. Then I'm going to do a quick update on the provisioning service. What is it, and where we are with that one, and kind of a hinting where we're planning to go live with that one. If you're not aware what is a provisioning service, you'll like that in a few minutes when we're showing that, most likely. Then we have Chris Kent doing his first demo today, which is around list formatting tips, either column formatting or view formatting. So again, probably not the war horses, something else this time. I got a technical, one of the technical writers was wondering why is the YouTube video has a labels and tags called war and horses from the previous call, but it made sense. Chris Kent had a demo around war horses in the context of war horses. Anyway, let's see what is that one today. Then we have Chaks. Chaks is not yet on the call. It is pretty early for him, so 7 a.m. in the morning. So he'll be joining for the accessing file thumbnails from a SharePoint library in PowerApps and Flow. So that kind of functionality. We talked about that one yesterday with Chaks, and then Chris is going to do another demo, which he already teased in the Twitter, like 10 minutes before the call, is around how do you build a simple game using a PowerApps. And obviously PowerApps isn't really a game platform, but the whole point is that it demonstrates the power of the PowerApps platform as such. So all of the things what you can do with that. So it's a cool demo to show as well. Now let's get on going on the actual slides and the reminders. So just a quick recap on all of the resources what we have available. SharePoint Dev Docs, where you can actually find all of the latest documentation, how to get started on SharePoint Framework or any other SharePoint development topics. AKMS SP Dev Docs, SharePoint Dev Videos, all of the recordings and good demos and everything else is getting released in the YouTube channel at SP Dev Videos. And then if you run into any SharePoint Dev issues and you do not have a Premier support opportunity, you can always open up a issue for us, and we'll triage that internally in engineering to know if something isn't working properly in the SharePoint Dev platform, in SharePoint Online or in on-premises. So please use the issue list for that as well. Now let's actually get on going on the one-sliders and updates related on the provisioning and PnP CSOM and the PnP PowerShell. Bert, will you quickly do the intros on this one?
Yes, sir. We have released version 3.5.19.01, actually the January release of PnP Sites Core library, with some key differences, some key improvements. It's about throttling. So the throttling does work now actually, simply it does work now. It didn't work before, now it works. So if you get throttled, your code won't completely fail. So that's a good thing. There's several improvements in the Modern Pages APIs that we added. We have extension methods to reset a file version. So lots of good things happening. But I especially want to talk about SharePoint 2019 in this call, Vesa, because we've been promising that for a long time, and people have been asking that for a long time, and it's looking pretty good to have this in an actual February release. So development has been done. It's in the dev branch. Test automation is running 2019 test cases. Everything looks good. First drop will be a beta version of SP 2019 support, meaning it will kind of do the same as SharePoint 2016. So we're not yet working on, for example, enabling modern page support for SharePoint 2019, but that will be then the next steps. First step is just getting the basics to work, and that's looking quite good, so it should be in the next release. And some other release updates will be there as well. One of the bigger things is support for folders for modern pages. New schema support is a little bit doubtful if we will make it, so that probably will
not
be
probably on
the next
February, but the following thing. On the schema support, what I wanted to pinpoint there is that now that we have a relatively reliable schema, and I'm a Finn, so nothing is always perfect, relatively super reliable schema or the provisioning engine for SharePoint, we're starting now to extend that on top of the SharePoint as well. So we will add a Teams support. So we're already having a discussion with Teams team to have in our tenant template a Teams support for provisioning teams and channels and tabs. So you can actually create one template which will provision multiple SharePoint site collections and teams and tabs and channels and all of that stuff automatically. So that's pretty cool. And obviously updating the modern portal capabilities when we do this as well. Right? Yes.
Yep,
awesome.
Correct.
Cool. Let me actually move on to the slides. So thank you, Bert, for that one. Let's flip to Erwin, because Erwin was on the call. Anything you want to pinpoint from the PnP PowerShell side?
Yeah, we released the same version as Bert did, basically, because we're in sync with the versions. And as we piggyback fully on PnP Sites Core, all the benefits of PnP Sites Core, they basically drill down into PnP PowerShell too. As Bert mentioned, there is this function now in PnP Sites Core to reset the file version. So we have a commandlet for that one. And what is coming actually in the upcoming February release will be a function to export a client-side page to a provisioning template. We do know that when you export a template from a site, we only include the home page, but sometimes it's actually handy if you get other pages too. And now we have a commandlet that basically takes a single page and generates a provisioning template of that single page. So it's still manual work. You will have to go into the template and copy the client-side page element out of it into your main template, but it makes your life easier and makes things much smoother in creating somewhat more complex templates. Related to 2019, the goal is also to have a 2019 version of PnP PowerShell out next month.
which is actually within a few weeks. So there's so many things to do, but we'll probably get it done, at least the beta version, right?
Yep.
And one update before we go to the modernization section related on CSOM Core and the PnP CSOM and the native CSOM and PnP PowerShell. So for this quarter, we still have in the engineering task list to actually provide a native CSOM.NET standard version of, native, what am I saying? Native .NET standard version of CSOM. Does that make sense, right? It does. So the .NET standard version of out-of-the-box CSOM is coming in this quarter. The quarter means from January until March. It is still in the pipeline to make that happen. And when that happens, then the PnP CSOM and the PnP PowerShell will get the core versions as well. Not necessarily on the same quarter, but that's a pre-requirement to get the out-of-the-box CSOM .NET standard version on. And last I had a chat about this one with the owning PM yesterday, and he was promising me again that it will happen, it will happen, it will happen. So it is looking super promising, and I will be next week in Redmond to hunt these people down if they can't keep their promises. Anyway, moving on.
There's one more little thing that we actually changed in the latest release of PnP PowerShell. I just realized is that. You will not see it right now in this version, but the moment we release a new version and you do a connect PnP online, we will give you a little notification of the fact that there is a newer version available. So we do a little version check. We do that only once per session. It's not that for every commandlet that we do that. So we only do that in the connect. At the connect time, do you connect to your site? We do a little check if there is a newer version of PnP PowerShell available. If so, we will notify you. Yeah. And that script will continue to work nothing. It's not a breaking message or something. You don't have to take any action. We'll just notify you, hey, new version, you might want to update.
Because it's always a good thing to have the latest version running in your machine. So, anyway. Cool. So moving on things, I think we are flipping back to Bert related on the modernization tooling, and you were releasing something new just 10 minutes before this call.
Yes, actually I did. So the page transformation UI got a beta release. So it's growing up. It's slowly moving towards the final release. But the beta release has two main components, main improvements. Actually, that's all the performance improvements that were put in the page transformation framework are now used by the transformation UI tool. And there is this additional banner that is showed on classic pages. So both pages, the classic page and the page that you generated as a modern page from the classic page, both have a banner allowing you to kind of flip back and forth between the pages, making it very visible that there is a modern page available. So that was released indeed 10 minutes before the call. What else? So 2 weeks ago we released, 1 week ago we released the Modernization Framework version 9, January version actually. With the .1 release, we did an incremental release as well later on. Main things is performance improvements, support for new client-side web parts, and there was like a bug when people try to transform pages in the root web of the root site collection of the tenant. Something went wrong over there, and that's been fixed. For the second component of modernization, which is the modernization scanner, there's the version 2.3 release is still available. Main things there is checking for a new version, like with PowerShell. So and some options to support disabling modern list libraries in a more selective way. That aligns with the actual, we can talk about that right now, that aligns with the communication that we send out that the tenant level opt-out of modern list libraries will disappear. So that has been announced. And with the modernization scanner, you can actually just scan your environment and it will give you a list of site collections where we think like, yeah, maybe these are candidates where you should then opt out from modern list libraries. And we have automated that and that's available via the link here on the slide. So if you are today not using modern list libraries, you did a tenant opt out, you need to take an action to a more selective opt-out for the site collections that you want to opt out, and the other ones will flip to modern once we take away the setting. What else to do? I think then, the last thing, the URL to remember, svpnp-page transformation UI will get you to the beta release that I mentioned in the beginning.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you, Bert, for that one. Now, moving on things, we do have 4 demos coming up. So let me actually do a quick demo on our upcoming provisioning service, so everybody's up to date on what we are doing in here. So this is something which we announced, and let me share my screen. So this is something which we announced in the Ignite. So as part of the Ignite sessions, if you have seen the recording, you'll know about this one. But let me share my desktop so I can actually show you how it works in practice. I'm going to do a live demo. It's going to take 4 minutes, hopefully, to get a simple site actually provisioned, but I'll explain what it actually means. Now, somebody needs to confirm when you can see my screen. It should say provisioning service with the smiling web faces, but yet because it's all about smiles, right? And excellent, now everybody is getting that. Cool. So just to be super clear on this one, this is still currently in internal testing. You cannot bypass the system. We are explicitly whitelisting certain tenants where we are testing this, so you cannot actually use the service yet. So just to be super clear on that. But this is something which we are planning to get out in matter of hopefully weeks rather than months. We are still, there's certain things which we still need to figure out and double check the wordings and all of that, so everybody is super clear on what's actually happening here. But the whole point of this one is that everything started actually from the fact that we released a while back a SharePoint Starter Kit. And the SharePoint Starter Kit is something which it basically is demonstrating how to create a modern portals, and it has custom web parts and all of that functionality is available. Now, a lot of our customers were saying that's awesome, and every person who've actually used that is super excited on moving to the modern, but it felt that it's too difficult to actually get up and running because you needed to run some PowerShell and install PowerShell and all of that. So what we wanted to do is to then provide, first of all, a simple way for provisioning cool sites and demos and sample sites, and make it as easy as possible for anybody who want to do, let's say, in quotes, a pre-sales gig or pre-sales, or explain how the SharePoint Online works. Now, the second dimension on this discussion is that you probably heard about the SharePoint Look book. So let me actually find that one for you, because this is obviously super awesome. We talk about the SharePoint design, and you can actually see this awesome SharePoint designs, which we actually originally created for Ignite 2018. Now, this is kind of cool. It is a PDF file, which you can then scroll, and you get some ideas around, or it's a website, and you get ideas on, ooh, that could be a marketing site. And then you can circle around the marketing site. But wouldn't it be cool if you would be able to actually provision this kind of a site to your tenant? And that's precisely what we want to do with the provisioning service. So in the provisioning service, as long as you're a tenant administrator in your tenant, and well, we recommend to use first at least the test tenants for this one, you can actually scan what kind of templates are available. So Give Contoso, Work at Contoso, Executive Corner, Contoso Workshop Site, Starter Kit, Branded Contoso, and so on. So I'm going to start with a Contoso Enterprise landing page. So I want to have a custom landing page which I can use in my sample tenant. And how it works is that I will basically go and make a decision. Oh, that's a really cool looking site, so I want kind of this one provisioned. I will go here, click add to my tenant. At this point, there will be Azure AD consent, so you need to actually have a consent related on the application. In my case, I have already done the consent, so there wasn't the Azure AD consent question. And at this point, I can then, based on a template, I can do some overriding of the parameters, and if needed, I can actually adjust even the colors. So I can actually set, if I'm doing a, let's say, a pre-sales consultant gig tomorrow for one of my customer, I can set the colors based on the customer colors. So this should be relatively helpful as well. Now, in my case, I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to update the site URL to be Contoso Landing 5. Let's do SIG demo, so we actually find it more easily. I'm going to copy that one. I'm going to click provision. And what happens here right now is that the provisioning is getting started. So we use the context of the user, that consent which is coming from Azure AD, and we are queuing up now a provisioning task. And I'm going to go now in this call up to the level of quickly showing what's happening in the background. So right now, This is the backend, which you do not have access. We're looking into open sourcing this at some point, but when we actually get moving first, you do not have access on the source code. But it's a typical asynchronous way of provisioning modern sites based on PnP provisioning. So in here, you can actually see that there's a task already running, and there's a invocation provisioning function is running, and I think we used SIG demo as the URL. So now there's a provisioning is already started within the context of the identity which granted the permission to the tenant. And now if I actually move back in let's actually go in here. Let's go to the function. So actually, let's do this one more time so we can see when it's actually finished. There we go. It should take like 2 to 6 minutes to actually complete. I'm going to move away this window from here. I'm going to go here. The URL was something. Actually, let me go to the admin site and let's go to the active sites, because the site collection is already created at this point. Near the older. There's the SIG demo site collection. If I go to the SIG demo, I can actually see that the site collection is already created, and now the Azure application behind the scenes is applying the configuration to the site, which means that it's creating the sites and news, uploading files, which we can actually already see here what is happening. Now, eventually, after a while, it will look exactly like this one, and we can double check that one in a second, but I'll show you what are the default templates, at least in a high level, which will be available. So it will have some sample news, sample images, sample content, sample web parts. It will demonstrate the usage of the modern web parts in the front landing page. It will show a example documents and presentations in there, and a weather web part and a few additional web parts. So basically it is only there to demonstrate what can be done in the modern portal, and you're able to then provision this kind of in quotes starting points or a demo sites which you can then configure for yourself. Now, do you need to go to the Azure for this? No. This is completely, everything works just by going to the site and signing in and consenting to application the needed permissions, which are high permissions because we're creating a site collections. If you don't feel comfortable of using this within your tenant, that's fine. Go to Office 365 developer program, request a developer tenant for you, and then you can actually use that one for provisioning the site collections and templates. But basically, we will have then Contoso landing pages. We'll have a brand site with an example content, so you can get all of these sites automatically with content provisioned to your tenant, or a give site and give at Contoso with some example content, or a workshop site with some example content. So it is there to demonstrate what's possible, and it basically, like I said, it's doing precisely what we have in the lookbook. But it's basically giving the lookbook, the real lookbook look and feel, so you're able to go to their sites which are provisioning to your tenant and just do an edit, and then you're able to investigate that, okay, so how did we actually build the site? What are the elements? What are the web parts? What are the functionalities? And that's pretty cool. Now, in this case, I think if we go to the Contoso landing, if I refresh this one, have I been talking already enough? Yes, I have. We can actually say that that was the end result. We are now in the site SIG demo URL, and that is the site which is available in here. So super easy way of getting any of these templates available which are in the PnP provisioning. The templates themselves will be available for you to download as well, but we're not taking any contributions for now to the template. So it's more like a source open templates for now. And right now we're working with the SharePoint design team to make these templates available, and so what will be in the templates and polishing the templates up. And to be fair, working with Irvin is helping on this one, Paula is helping with this one, and the PnP core team is helping on the bigger infrastructure. But like I said, it is not available yet. This service currently is in internal testing. It does not work for you. You can go there, you can see that, but it does not work within your tenant, so you cannot use it yet. We will make a proper announcement when it's available. But hopefully that's interesting, and hopefully it really makes it easy for you to get started on the modern experiences. Some of the templates will actually contain custom web parts and extensions like the starter kit. Some of them are relatively simple with out-of-the-box web part and out-of-the-box content. But that's it for this one. So let's flip back on the slides. Dun, 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 dun. A quick update on that one. Like I said, on the timing of that one, it's going to be within weeks rather than months. We still have certain things what we need to actually get figured out. Well, the technology works already. There are non-technology things what we need to still work on. Now, Chris, your turn.
All right. Let me share my screen here. You guys let me know when you see it.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. Do the thing with the button. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Tell me when you see it. It's exciting. It's coming.
I've got it. I don't have it yet. I need to still wait. Loading. And got it. Take it away.
All right. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Kent. I'm an Office Development MVP and a member of the core team. Let's take a look. So, as you'll be glad to know for your marketing overlords that are concerned about the warrior horses, that the warrior horses have gone corporate. All right. So now, let's see what they got to do. So now they're going corporate and they're trying to incorporate more enterprise level battles. They need to really buff up on their corporate nothingness, right? So the little speeches throughout the day. So we're going to take a look at that. So I've got this list over here. All right, full of my corporate nothingness. I got a nice title, and I've got, the little speech they need to do here. All right, and generally, if I want to do column formatting, it's as simple as I come down here, column settings, I say format this column, and I paste an exciting format. All right, all this one does is it applies teal text, right? That's easy. So now I come over here, and I've got our nice repo here. Get that? Where we've got all sorts of cool samples, and I come in here to column samples, and I look down here, and I say, hey, look, text wrap format. I think this is exactly what I want. What this will do is it'll take this stuff right here where it's getting cut off there. I want to see that full speech, right? So horses have hooves. Using a mouse is hard. So I want to show the full speech all at once. So I'm going to grab this format. It's a really simple format. It's actually one of our earliest ones. And I come back here and I'm like, okay, I'll go in here. Oh my gosh! There's no format this column option for multi-line text fields. What do I do? Well, good news, although that is strange and not obvious, you can always do this for all columns. You can go into list settings, choose your column down here, and there's this nice little field right down here where you can paste your column formatting directly, right? So I can expand that out so you can see that a little better. So I'm going to paste that format I got from the sample. All right, we're going to see if we can make it just slightly fancier. All right, we're going to add attributes. I'm going to add it right here. Let's add a class. All right, just to make it a little more obvious that something got applied. So we're going to say MS font color. I'll say theme. Okay. All right, so we save that. Hit OK on that. Now we go back to our exciting site. Boom! Now we can see the full thing, and it's a lovely shade of blue. But the whole idea here is, for whatever reason, multi-line text fields don't have that option. So just to review what we did, take a look back here. This is how you normally do it for column formatting. But you're sad now because you can't do it in multi-line. Go in there. Go to list settings, choose your column, column formatting, paste it right there. You're good to go. You'll see the same thing in site columns. So you can do this for all of them. So if something else doesn't show up, here you go. All right. One caveat, though, on this is don't use rich text. It's not recommended. Don't use it. So list formatting is going to always encode your values. That's why you can't just do HTML directly. You've got to do that element type, right? And rich text values, they come back as HTML. Therefore, your HTML will be encoded and displayed, and you will be sad. So just don't use rich text, but you can use multi-line plain text all over the place. You can easily reference that in any format or view formatting as needed. And finally, here's some resources. So check out the full documentation here. Find out what kind of columns are allowed, all that kind of stuff. Here's that sample. And then if you want a longer write-up of that, you can go to this link here. We paste that in there. So it's a slightly longer blog. We'll tell you the details. But that's it for the list formatting tip this week. Woo! All right. You guys still there? Anybody?
Mute myself. Excellent. There we go. So excellent. Oh, how did we land it on the landing page of the presentation? Sorry for that. So thank you, Chris. Good tip, and I know that you have another demo coming up on later today. So it's good that that wasn't too long, but it's awesome to see that 4Horses are evolving. So now they're in business. So there's quite a lot of reactions on that one on the Iron window. Cool. Now Chaks, it is next you. So we have 2 demos coming up still today. First, Chaks accessing file dumps from a SharePoint library in PowerApps and Flow, and then we get Chris back on showing his simple game using PowerApps. Well, it's not super simple, but anyway. Chaks, you can hear me? I can see that.
Yes, Vesa, can you hear me?
Yeah, everything is good. Audio is fine.
So I'm going to share my screen.
Excellent.
Right, so this one has a pretty good background story. So I don't know how many of you are following Twitter. There's a PowerApps Twitter user, Brian Edwards. I think he was previously he worked for Microsoft, and then he now runs his own consulting. He started blogging about how do you leverage SharePoint document libraries that has pictures. Customers use document libraries not only for documents but also for storing images and building an image gallery. Right? A pretty common scenario. And then that turned out to be a very complex thing to, just read and show the images in app, in PowerApps. So people started doing this, and many companies started wanting the scenario to work. And when we started looking at, hey, what is the community doing? Boy, that was really hard. People were talking to Azure AD. People were doing some hackery in SharePoint APIs, trying to get the thumbnails, render list data as stream, a lot of stuff. So I got really frustrated being a product manager in this area. I was like, why is this so hard? So I went and started doing some stuff. And then I realized we actually have thumbnail support in Microsoft Graph. So if you use the Drive API, that is the Files API in Microsoft Graph, and you can get the thumbnail of a particular item, and that drive could be your OneDrive, or that drive could be in SharePoint site. And yes, for this, if you go and read the Graph REST API, it would be like you would have to go through graph.microsoft.com. So that is Microsoft Graph, but there's also another way to leverage these Microsoft Graph APIs within SharePoint using the new v2.0 endpoint. And so I continued my journey. I wrote a blog post, and with that, what I did was I used a flow and then used our HTTP action in SharePoint. So here's the flow. Let me try to get here. It is. So I used the HTTP action in SharePoint connector and used the v2.0 endpoint, and now started calling the graph to get all of the details. So this is like you're building one by one. So you get the site details, and then you can grab the JSON result in a variable, and then you get all the drives in that site, and then you filter that drive to a particular picture library that you are interested in. And then you use this awesome, complex, super powerful, robust API construction. Just take time. If you go to my blog, you can read this. Even if you're not doing this right now, it's a very good primer for API construction, especially for Graph. And with one call, I can get all of the thumbnails for a particular file in SharePoint library. And then, I can construct, and using PowerApps and Flow integration, I easily get that back. And boom, now I have a demo that looks like this, right? So get images, I click the button, and then that goes, runs the flow, and then brings the images back. Still, this is really complex. So I went ahead and told my engineering team, hey, this seems to be something that we already do in lists and libraries. Why is it so hard? Why can't I get the thumbnail? Behold, the engineering team came back to me within a few weeks and said, we have this for you to go try it out. And then we ship the code right now. It's already in prod. So we can go through this complex step. I don't want to go through that. I want to go through the simple, super fast, efficient way to do this in PowerApps and Flow. So I'm going to connect to a document library. I'm going to start a new app. I'm going to select my site. So one of the things you'll see in PowerApps.
Chaks, sorry for jumping in. Let's use the full real estate of your screen because there's no point using just 1/3. Just.
Good.
Yep.
So one of the things is we do support document libraries to some extent, at least adding metadata, not uploading files. So if you do create an app or if you connect a data source, you just enter the document library name and then click connect, and that's going to connect to an existing document library in PowerApps. And now this is going to build the similar app how you would connect to a list, right? So I can go here, I can change the title, for example, to show name. And then I get a really good view. But now I'm going to change the gallery to, sorry, this Skype thing is really bothering me with all the noise. Do you also hear the noise, Vesa?
It's really, actually, I don't know. Let's see if we have.
So I'm going to change this to image and title, right? So I get the title of the document, and then I have some image. Now I want to show the thumbnail of the document here, just like you would go see in your SharePoint. So I'm going to select this. Instead of sample image, now I'm going to say this item, because I'm in the gallery, dot. Now we get the thumbnail object. So thumbnail.
And sorry, Chaks,
now I can get the large, medium, and small thumbnails.
Sorry,
so
Chaks.
I select large. Boom. Now I get the preview of the thumbnail right there in my PowerApps. So it's really simple. No hackery, no flow, nothing. Now there are some files that we support. There are some files we don't support. I was surprised to hear that we actually don't support Excel files for thumbnails. So I'm, figuring out what actually is going on there. But if you do have basically an icon, so for example, I can go to media, I can browse, and I can go and upload my Excel icon right to my PowerApp. So I've updated it in the media. I go back. Now I can write a simple expression. So instead of this.thumbnail.large, if I write an expression that says if ends with this item dot file name with extensions. Name with extension will give me the file name .docx or xlsx and things like that. And I'm going to say display the Excel image that I just uploaded in my media, or use the large. So now you can see I have the thumbnail for the Excel icon as well. So this is really, really simple way to access thumbnails. I'll go even further. If you do have an image library which is full of images, you can easily do that as well. So here is a gallery. All I'm going to do now here is do the same step. I'm going to add the data source. Now I'll be able to choose my SharePoint connection. Now I'll go through the same wizard I did like creating a new app. I'm going to select the site. And now again here, it's not going to show me the list of the document libraries in the site, but rather I can just type in and say pictures and then click connect. And now that's going to connect. And now it won't add the image thumbnail automatically. So I'm going to go do this item thumbnail dot large. And now suddenly I got a really good photo viewer images coming from SharePoint. Now these are self-authenticated URLs, so they are good for, they usually have an expiry, I think a week or two. I'm trying to figure out the right expiry date on these URLs. But every time you load the app, they're going to be refreshed and you're going to get that. It works in mobile as well, so you don't really have to be, sometimes what happens, some solutions, they work in the web because they're authenticated. In the mobile, they don't, but this solution works in mobile as well. So this is using and accessing the thumbnails in PowerApps. So in Flow, it's the same thing. So here's the flow I created in a library. That is the default documents library for this library here. I can go to my flow, so it's a very simple flow. When file is created, send an email. So here I'm going to say, oh, here's a file that you added, and here's a preview. So now if you go to the dynamic content and search for thumbnail, you get the 3 properties just like you saw in the Power Apps: thumbnail large, medium, and small. So I'm going to put thumbnail large here and then just format so it doesn't look weird. And that's it. So now I'm going to save this. And now I'm going to go to my document library, upload a document. So I'm uploading a PDF here. And now we should soon see this flow run. There it is. It succeeded, and I got a mail. And here it is. So you can see that this is just a URL, a typical demo failure here, but I wouldn't say it's a failure. I was just going to show you this is really a URL, so there it is. So what I'm going to do here, image source, that's it. Now I'm going to test. Use data from previous runs, succeeded. I love this test flow. If you're not using it or haven't tried it out, this is really cool. So now I can test it. It's going to run with the same data that it had previously. And now I'll probably get an email with the thumbnail. Ooh, there it is. How cool is that? Now we can actually give some meaningful information to the user and not just a link and say, hey, go visit this thing, go visit this document, or open this document. And one of the cool things is that because this is out-of-the-box thumbnail that exactly used in SharePoint and OneDrive, it supports all of the file formats. So if you didn't notice here, this is actually an Adobe Illustrator file. This is not a doc or Office document. And if you had seen in my Power App, if you go look at the name, Demo Quadro Vector Blue. So Demo Quadro Vector Blue. Here's a preview thumbnail of that Adobe Illustrator file. So that's the beauty of this solution. It integrates exactly the same way as how we integrate and get these thumbnails, previews, and document libraries. So that was my demo for today. I hope you enjoyed the demo, and if you have any questions, this should be available in your tenants because it's all code, it's rolled out. Use it and let us know what you think and what other stuff that we can do. We do listen for feedback. Here's a very good example. Of course, uploading documents, for example, is something that we're working, uploading pictures, and also having support for document libraries, custom forms, and direct app support is something that we are working this year. So you'll see iterative improvements in those areas as we progress in this year. That's it, Vesa. Back to you.
Thank you, Chaks. Thank you. I think there's no point actually going to the slides first. The next demo, thank you, Chaks, super powerful, and this is really good stuff to show in the context of SharePoint, because the Flow and Power Apps is something what we work together all the time. And just to kind of for introducing and explaining, Chaks is the person, one of the PMs working in the integration part between SharePoint and Power Apps and Flow. Power Apps and Flow are in a different organization. Those are run by different teams. But Chaks is really the PM and the person who writes specs for integration part, right, Chaks? Is that the right way of defining the role?
Specs, customer feedback. I'm all here, hearing what people are doing and trying to see and simplify things in the product.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Now, Chris, let's actually move to your desktop. You're not actually technically doing this in the context of SharePoint, right?
Yeah. Yep. This is just PowerApps. There are no data connections in this Power App.
Yeah.
All right. Can you guys see it?
Not yet. Let's wait a while. So here we go. Now we can actually. Yep. I got it.
All right. So we'll see how well this animation and some of the sound works in this format. But there is a video if you want to watch that. And you can also go download this thing. So this is a Power App. Real quick, I'm going to walk you through it. So we just saw Chaks show some really cool enterprise corporate type features. This is not that. This is a game. Why wouldn't you do that? That makes total sense, right? All right, so I'm going to spare you the great techno music here. Oh, yeah. All right, we're going to skip all the music for now. But here's the idea. So you come in here, and I'm going to play this game. All right, play. This is a mobile phone game. All right. So we come in here, and this is a, what is it called, Sokoban clone, so the old Japanese warehouse thing. Right, so you can move around, hit a wall. Ooh, ooh. All right, we'll go back, move our crates. I screwed it up. Restart the level. But you get the idea here. If I wanted to come down here and go up here. All right, we got one torch on, so that's good news. We just got to get those crates onto those lava spots. Right? But again, can't leave the walls. All right, we'll go over here. Boom! There we go, we did it! Oh yeah! And so then we go on to our next level and so on, right? So we've got several levels here. I think there's 6 levels, right? We'll click through these. But how do we do this? Well, one quick thing first is we come back here to home here, and we can see we've got a character chooser. All right, so we can pick our guy. We'll pick a zombie. Right. So we come back in here to our level. Now we've got a zombie, right? Okay, I do all sorts of things. You get the idea here. It's fun. I'll just play a game for everybody. It's awesome. All right. So we go back here. I also got support here for right-handed versus left-handed mode, which again makes it very easy to do that using PowerApps and all the data binding. So I switched it to left-handed. All right. So it's a mobile phone. So you can imagine now I need the controls on the left side, and the whole level draws itself over here. Okay. All right, final thing that this guy's got, if we go back to home, which is now over here, switch that back so I don't get confused, it's got some very exciting credits where, again, this is primarily to show off that my kids tested this thing. They had a great time. All right, so what did I learn? Why did I do this? The primary reason I did this was trying to learn a few things that are not obvious from just doing, your standard forms, 3 screens to edit, all that kind of stuff. So I went through and did some stuff. Let's take a look at this simple game. All right. So here we go. We got this on this screen. The main thing to note is on the on start is where we're going to set up all that level information. So, and Kevin, you're asking, probably about 40 hours. It was very exciting. And some of that was just trying to figure out why the heck was I doing this and what I was doing. Okay. So the main thing to note up here is there is a limitation right now for media references. You cannot reference them outside of just referencing the media part, but I wanted to do a string. All right, so I want to be able to reference these things by string so I can make my level design simpler. So I created this collection here of an image map that allows you to do some cool filtering. There's more details about this all on a blog, so I'm going to fly through it pretty quick. But I'll be happy to talk to you guys about any of this stuff. Okay. But down here, this is our giant levels variable, right? So it's just an array of these very exciting things. This is actually that first level. Can you see it? Sure you can. So you can kind of see these are the outside pieces, right? Inside here, this is the tile. Then it's 1 if it's solid or 0 if it's, you can walk through it. So I did it this way, so it was a little easier to do this. Try and get an idea of how you could design those levels, and there's some details about the start, right? So we've got a whole array of these things. So that's what makes it possible to have this app only have 4 screens. Despite having 6 levels, those levels can be any number of things. Using that image map, you could create themed levels, all that kind of stuff. So let's talk about how do we take that array of, little strings that indicate tiles and turn that into something PowerApps can use. All right, so in our level start, we do this nice little thing up here. All we do is we grab the current level. One thing to note is I'm using indexes all over the place. So I just mean the index of the collection, right? So the item of the collection. Indexes start at 1. Why? But that's what happens here. But you can see you got last, first in, past the index to the collection, and then you can get that item. So it's a little bit convoluted, right? But again, you can see that more on the blog here. By the way, on the blog, if you go over here, which I think David pasted it in there, but you can download this thing as a zip file. Again, there's no data connections. There's nothing to set up. You can go ahead and bring it up and then play that in your own environment. And that'll be a lot easier to check this out if you want to see what's going on here. Thanks, David. All right, so in here, then I'm converting that background stuff into a tiles array using this nice little for all. If you guys haven't seen this, this is a way to take one collection, loop through it, and create another one out of it, which allows me to use that image map here, so I can convert the left value right of that string using that image map I created earlier, which makes it really easy for my tiles to reference what image it's supposed to be, and so on. All right, then there's some other stuff. This is how you do a random, so there's a random tip on the bottom there. You do a shuffle on your collection, and then you're going to grab the first one. So, very exciting. Everyone getting all this? Perfect. Okay, so now what's the actual thing happening? So let's take a look at the main game here. So if we come in here, here's our level. All right, so the way this works is there are 140 images right here. And you can see them all. They're laid out in 10 rows and 14 columns. In those tiles, right, so we just pick one random here. Let's grab this guy. We're doing a cool thing, or not cool. I'm hijacking the border thickness. So the border thickness here, I'm not using it because border style is set to none. So I can hijack that. So you can see tile number 47 has a 47 here. That way, in its image, right, we can actually, let's see, I just killed the image. I did. Let's click on one specific. All right, so the image, I can do that same indexing based on the border thickness and grab that image. All right, so I can grab that, I can put all this together, and that way, it doesn't matter, as long as my model, right, so that I've put together with that for all on that levels, then these tiles will draw themselves exactly where they go. Now, by data binding the X and the Y, right, so I can see things where I've got the right-handed, they'll all move themselves over as necessary, right, but they also draw them in the correct spot based on their index, which allows me to have a set piece at the beginning where I say how many columns and rows and what size those tiles should be. So it allows you some real flexibility as you move through these levels. All right, so that's how those work. These crates, so these foreground objects are pretty similar. Oh, there's so many tiles. Let's go up here. All right. So if you look here, we've got some crates, right? So the crates work, right? You can have up to 5 crates. So all they do is they just turn themselves off. If there isn't a crate object, they find out where they should move. So all PowerApps really is doing here is drawing my model that's just a variable or a collection at any given time. So there's nothing else fancy going on with that. So all I need to do then is update the model. So if I can update the model, then the PowerApps, it'll just draw it for me. I don't have to do any fancy things there. So the way I did that, and I don't know if this is a good idea. You guys tell me. What I wanted was a global function, right? That's not really a thing in PowerApps, but I wanted a way that, the move logic is pretty complicated. I didn't want to write that 4 different ways, right, to determine how we can move if there's a wall, if there's a crate, is the crate touching another crate, is the crate against the wall, play the right sounds. There's a lot of things to that. So what I did was I created this 0 duration timer. This timer has a duration of 0. It does have an auto start set to this evaluate move context variable. And so all I'm doing is when evaluate move turns true, start the timer. It'll immediately execute the on timer end. And in the on timer end, I'm then doing all of the move logic. And then at the very end, I set that to false. So this acts as a sort of global function that I could then call. So the way I'm using that, we'll take a look at that again in a second, is if you click on the little D-pad here, this is all I have to do. I set up my quote-unquote parameter, right, which is just requested move here. I'm saying I want to go left. So X minus 1, and this is what direction the image should be rotated. And then I set that to true. So that calls that global function with this. So you can see all of these are just some variation of that, right? So down is just that, evaluate move. By doing that, though, I get this nice global function. And if you take a look at that, there's a timer. There it is. All right, so we take a look. You can see I've got comments in here. By the way, if you're not aware of that, you just put strings, right? Put them in quotes, put a little semicolon on there, do all that stuff. Very exciting. All right, but then we go through here, and this is just all we're doing is checking to see against our model, right, is the requested move possible? If it's possible, do the thing. Update a crate if you need to, right? Play a sound if you need to. That's what all these are doing here. And I'm just playing sounds by, again, setting a context variable, play sound walk. True, right? And I'm resetting those audio pieces. And at the end, all I do is I check for a win every time you move. So how did I test the logic? I just played the game a whole lot. I also handed the phone to the children so they could play quite a bit. So that's the basic idea of the main game. So you got all these different sound objects you can see down here, all hidden. A couple things to note. The final thing, it's not very important, but the credits, all this is there is a brief collection of my credits that I created here, right? Boom. And all I did was I used a gallery, and I've got this credit scroll. So the gallery has its Y set to a variation of the value of that credit scroll. So it just moves up a gallery. It's not really very fancy. But a couple things you can do. You can do a lot with timers. So, for instance, on the main piece here, this animation that happens here, where this guy's demonstrating what you're going to do in the game, I'm using a version of what I'm calling keyframe animation, where I'm just saying, I only care about certain things, right? Like when the image should shift based on that timer sample duration. You'll see this divided by 6, and that was just to scale it, right? So again, I don't expect you guys to really care or pick up on a lot of that just yet, but feel free to download it. It's totally free. All the images are public domain, so you can make all the changes you need to them. I did not make most of the images, just to be clear. That's in the credits, so check it all out. Okay. All right, so, yeah, woo! So sorry there were no horses in the game. Very sad, I'm sure. Does anyone have any questions or anything we want to talk about this?
Yeah, there was quite a lot of, obviously, Iron Window discussions, as you can see. This is, yeah, horses come to the level 7. You should actually do that. That's a surprise. What? Horses? What?
Yeah, horse, what? That should be a playable character, I agree.
Exactly. I'm going to flip back on the slides, so also work on that. So and obviously, sure, that wasn't really in the context of SharePoint, but again, it shows techniques which you can actually do in the context of SharePoint. So you can even draw that kind of looking forms and animations, make animations in the custom forms and all of that, right? So all of that is possible in the context of SharePoint as well, which is pretty cool. Everybody is wondering, how did you actually write that? But you said it by yourself. You just started testing stuff, right? And that was yeah. So there's a certain group of people, and Chris belongs to those, who are just wondering, can I do X and Y and Z? And then you start doing that, right? So you're testing the limits.
That's the most fun. The most fun.
Excellent. We have 3 minutes, and we're pretty short on the Q&A on this one because we did have 4 demos, but pretty decent actually. This wasn't too much rushing from that perspective. We had a quick demo on the provisioning service and status of that one, and then view formatting tip from Chris, and then a great demo from Chaks and great demo from Chris as well. Now. Yeah, Chris has too much time on his hands. If there's any urgent questions or things related on what were shown for Chaks and Chris or for me, feel free to ask them still. We still have 3 minutes. And in general, if you run into any SharePoint dev issues or anything, please go to the SP Dev Docs issue list, let us know, and we will try to fix those as fast as possible. Now, is there any update when we might see some provisioning functionality for SharePoint list forms customized with PowerApps? And I think this is from James related on, again, how would I provision the PowerApps on a SharePoint list form?
We just started working on that. It's something that doesn't exist today on both the sites. It exists in some form in PowerApps and Flow, but we are committed to look into it and push it forward this year. So hopefully we can have something at Ignite or even before that at SharePoint conference. No promises, but we are working on those scenarios for sure.
Yeah. So, and that's basically the scenario where we want to, if somebody creates a PowerApps, we want to deploy that in PowerApps, or at least being able to associate an existing PowerApps to a SharePoint list. So programmatically associating that one there. So really those enterprise automation scenarios. So, which
I have a dev site, or I have one site with a list with PowerApps. I want to go to another site with another list and PowerApps. So create that list with the same PowerApp custom forms. So yeah.
And on that content, actually, just to give everybody some insights on this one as well. So Chaks is right now on the Flow and PowerApp side, but Chaks was actually part of the team who created SharePoint Framework as a PM. So he understands plenty of the enterprise scenarios. So we have the right people inside of Microsoft asking these things to happen. So anytime I have a feature to upload file with PowerApps, Yes, to SharePoint, I guess. That's something I'm looking at next. Like, I'm getting frustrated that I can't upload a file to SharePoint from PowerApps, whether it's camera upload or just, put the picture control and upload it. So there are some technical challenges in how PowerApps deals with these. So it'll get simpler. Give us some time this year. We are working on that with .lib support. We have to do that. So we'll have some good stories soon. Cool. And we are running on the hour. There's too many questions, and yes, we will try to have more time on the Q&A on the following calls, but we also need to be conscious about the timing. I do apologize on that one. Feel free to use the Microsoft Tech community for following calls. We'll try to keep the demos less, and this is basically for me on showing you the provisioning service status, because I'm getting pretty excited on that one as well. Now, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for the awesome participation again on the Iron window. I think that's one of the key values of this course, because people are getting answers on their questions from the other people in the community. And please use the other community channels, helping each other as well. Follow up and the next calls, next general SharePoint Dev call is within 2 weeks, and next Thursday we have again the SharePoint Framework Special Interest Group call, which is on 31st of January with SharePoint Framework demos and more concentration on that one. But thank you everybody, thank you for your feedback, thank you for your input, and thanks, great demos from Chris and Chaks, and we'll come up with a great new community calls next time. Thank you everybody, bye bye.